I didn't know my wife was practicing how to tell a judge I slipped off a dark dock until I saw the message where she rehearsed the lie. It was a Tuesday in Charleston, October 14th, and I only meant to silence her buzzing phone so I could finish my coffee. The preview flashed up anyway. If the dock lights are out, it looks like an accident. My name wasn't there, but the marina was, and the policy was the kind of thing you don't joke about. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I'm Mark Ellison, 56, home inspector, the kind of man who rubber bands receipts by month and calls it a pension. Our bungalow on Rutledge Avenue creaks the same way every fall, humidity loosening old bones, and the morning light comes in slant through the azaleas. I shouldn't have looked again, but the next banner slid across the lock screen. Policy pays within 60 days. Then a winking emoji I'll never unsee. I set her phone down where it had been on the kitchen island and walked to the pantry like I'd forgotten something. Truth is, I needed a door to put between me and the sound of my heartbeat. I counted to 10, came back, and kept my hands busy with my invoices, termite report, joist repair, moisture meter reading, until my mind stopped spinning. I opened the fireproof box in the hall closet and slid out the life insurance declarations page I hadn't read since April. $750,000. Beneficiary Hannah Ellison, my wife of 12 years. In the trash, folded once and then crushed tight, lay a marina invoice with the price circled, $2,800 North Dock Electrical Assessment. I flattened it on the counter, feeling the paper crackle like a fuse. North Dock. The same phrase in the text preview. I photographed the invoice on my phone and slipped it under the blue rubber band marked October. The front door opened, and the smell of eucalyptus and sweat moved through the house before Hannah did. She kissed my cheek, light, practiced. "Loose mirror at the gym," she said. "Do you have time to swing by Iron Forge? Connor says it's unsafe." Connor Hale, her business partner, the cheerful owner of Iron Forge Fitness on King Street, who always laughed half a second too late. I said, "Sure," and watched her open the wine rack to count bottles. It was 9:20 a.m. My boat key hangs from a red float on a little hook by the back door, a habit that comes from growing up around water. I glanced at it like you'd check a child was still napping. Hannah's eyes didn't follow mine. They slid past to the calendar pinned beside the hook. Oyster roast, Bowen's Island, Saturday 10:18. "We should take the skiff out after," she said. Back turned, casual as the weather. I nodded and tried to take a full breath. The breathing didn't come. When she stepped into the shower, I set my phone camera to silent and took 3 careful photos of her text thread, each frame angled as if I were filming a countertop for a home inspection video. The words, dock lights, the boat test, the line about bruises happen in a fall. I didn't scroll far. I didn't need to. Every word I captured could live or die in a courtroom, and I wanted them clean. I texted my sister Ruth, a nurse who reads medicine labels like their weather reports. "If someone wanted to make a fall look real," I typed, "what would they do to the body before?" I erased it and wrote, "Call me." Then I waited by the sink until the kettle clicked off on its own and the house settled around me, like it always did, as if nothing under this roof could possibly be planning my death. I kept working because that's what I know how to do when something breaks. I document the damage first. But by Thursday night, the sound of oyster knives tapping on metal trays at Bowen's Island felt like countdown beeps. It was October 18th, warm for fall. The smell of pluff mud floating up the way it does before a tide change. Hannah laughed too easily, bright, ringing, a little sharp. I held my paper plate still with both hands so no one could see the tremor. I tried to listen to normal conversations, someone's roof leak, somebody's Folly Beach rental, which high school was beating who, but the dock lights from that text wouldn't leave my head. If the dock lights are out, it looks like an accident. I heard it under the chatter, the way you hear the hum of a bad transformer, even when music is playing. On the walk back to the rail, I caught my reflection in the window and had the dumbest thought. I looked like a man rehearsing an obituary that hadn't happened yet. My phone buzzed. Ruth. I stepped away toward the bait shed where a lone bulb made a cone of yellow and gulls screamed at the darkness. "What's going on?" she asked. Her voice was the kind of steady hospitals teach you. No judgment, only triage. "I think Hannah's planning something with Connor," I said. The two names sounded wrong together coming out of my mouth, like chemicals you're not supposed to mix. I saw texts, dock, boat. Policy pays in 60 days, and there's a marina bill for electrical work on the North Dock. 2,800. Ruth exhaled into the phone. "Okay, listen to me. If it's about a fall, there's 2 tracks, the scene and your body. Scene, lighting, rails, shoes, alcohol. Body, sedatives, antihistamines, anything that'll make you dizzy or slow your reflexes. Check every bottle in the house. Take pictures with the newspaper showing the date. Count the pills now and again later." I pressed my forehead to the cool siding. "I didn't want this to be real." "I know," she said. "But real is what we can defend in front of a judge. And Mark, do not confront her. Predators perform differently when they know they're being photographed. Let her act normal. There are a few sentences you remember for the rest of your life because they changed what you did the next morning. That was one of them. I said I'd call her after we got home. I put the phone in my pocket and stepped back under the twinkle lights. Hannah hooked her arm through mine and leaned into me. All perfume and warmth and a whisper. "Let's take the skiff out Sunday night before it gets too cold." "Sure," I said, and I tasted metal again. On Sunday the 19th, Charleston put on its church clothes weather. Blue sky pressed crisp against air that felt scrubbed. I made coffee too strong and set invoices into stacks by room. Crawl space notes here, attic photos there. Doing that calmed my hands in a way prayer used to. Hannah moved around the kitchen in a soft sweatshirt, tapping her phone with her thumbnail. "You know Connor says we need new safety mats," she said. "They're expensive. Small business life." She smiled and kissed the back of my neck, a move she used to do when rent was late years ago and we hadn't figured out how not to be poor. I nodded. "We'll look at the joint account this week." We didn't. She did. When she ran to the store for lemons and sparkling water, I went to the hall closet and pulled the fireproof box down again. I didn't need to see the $750,000 number. I needed the rest of the policy language. The part about the disability rider and accidental death provisions. I laid each page on the table like I was setting up a science fair display. Declarations, riders, premium schedule, the renewal she'd insisted we keep last spring. In the margin of the rider, in my own handwriting, I jotted H insisted April. Not suspicious at the time, just noted. I put that page under the blue rubber band with October. The medicine cabinet made my stomach dip. "We're not pill people, Ruth and me. Dad taught us aspirin is for fevers and stubborn men, and everything else is water and sleep." But there was a blister pack of Zolpidem, with the end of a sleeve torn ragged, and a bottle of diphenhydramine, with the safety seal slit down one side, like someone had peeled a label carefully and pressed it back. I took a photo of each with the post and courier folded to Sunday's date. I counted pills out loud, the way nurses do, and recorded the numbers in a spiral notebook we keep by the phone for plumber estimates and appliance model numbers. I wrote the time next to each, 2:37 p.m., 2:42 p.m. When Hannah came home, she set lemons on the counter and took my hand as if we were in a commercial. "Let's go down to the river house tonight," she said. "We'll do a little night cruise." The river house is what I call the little cypress-paneled place we rent cheap from an old friend on the creek, closer to the marina, closer to the skiff, closer to the dark. I said, "Maybe tomorrow. I've got a carburetor issue," which wasn't a total lie. That outboard has a personality, and it hates Sundays. I watched her face for disappointment and saw calculation instead, half a second of adjusting to a new move on the board. That night, when the house settled and the city's noise turned soft, I went down at the foot of our bed and put my face in my hands. I didn't pray for forgiveness. I didn't pray for strength. I didn't pray at all. I just listened to our bungalow breathe and realized I didn't know if I could sleep next to someone who had rehearsed explaining my death to a stranger in a robe. The clock digits slid from 11:58 to 11:59 to 12, and I counted each breath to make sure it happened. In the morning, I did the most normal thing I could think of. I went to work. A bungalow on Hugo Street with a sagging porch needed me to crawl under and photograph a joist with a rot bloom. I snapped a close-up with the day's newspaper in frame because that's how you prove when something was, not just what it was. On the drive back, I caught myself doing math I couldn't stop. 750,000 minus mortgage balance minus taxes equals a brand new life for someone who didn't have to look at me in a coffin. I pulled over at a church lot and put my head on the steering wheel until the buzzing under my ribs settled. That evening, Hannah slid a Merlot onto the coffee table and curled her legs under her, bare feet tucked neat like a ballerina. "Taste," she said, lifting her glass to mine. The taste ran warm and simple down my throat. I set the glass down, and when she went to get the phone charger, I lifted the bottle to eye level. The cork looked new, but there was a faint crescent on the edge, a notch. I pressed it back in and rolled it slightly, the way a man checks a tire. Later I'd figure out how to mark it without her noticing. For now I nodded and yawned and said I was going to bed early. In the darkness, I scrolled through my phone to Tom Keating's number, not for legal drama, but because the last time someone tried to bully me out of a job, Tom was the only attorney who watched me measure joist rot and said, "Bring photos." I typed and erased twice. Then I sent, "Tom, it's Mark Ellison. Need to talk, quietly. Life insurance, doc, possible plan? Can I come by your office tomorrow?" I lay back and stared at the ceiling fan cut 5 slow slices through the air. Somewhere down the street, a wind chime knocked a single note and stopped. I was past the part where you pretend something isn't happening. I was at the part where you decide who knows, in what order, and how you'll prove it without ever raising your voice. Sleep didn't come, but a plan did. The kind made of small, lawful steps you can testify to later. Pictures, pill counts, receipts under rubber bands, a copy of a key, a name in a doc log, a camera pointed at the right door. In the morning, I would take my coffee black, iron a clean shirt, and walk into Keating's office with a folder that looked like any other. I would hand him the page that said $750,000 and the photo that said "Doc Lights Out." And I would ask him to tell me where the law ended and survival began. Monday, October 20th. Charleston woke up humid and grey. The kind of morning where the air feels like a damp warning. I sat in my truck outside Tom Keating's law office for 10 full minutes before I went in. My palms were slick, not from guilt, but from the sick realization that this might all still be a misunderstanding, and that if it wasn't, I was walking into a war I didn't start. Keating's office smelled like lemon polish and quiet money. The walls were lined with framed diplomas and one picture of his old hunting dog. He shook my hand, that steady grip of a man who's seen people crumble before they sit. "Mark," he said, "you've got your inspector's notebook face on. Tell me what you found." I laid everything out on his desk. No drama, just evidence. The 2,800 Marina invoice. The life insurance page with the $750,000 benefit. The photos of Hannah's phone screen, each one angled, so the reflection of our kitchen window ran across the words like proof. I told him about the copied key receipt from the hardware store near Broad Street, how I'd found it in the junk drawer. Dated 10/24:42 p.m. River House, scribbled on the customer line. Keating didn't interrupt. He just wrote bullet points in a yellow pad and nodded once in a while. When I finished, he said quietly, "All right. We keep this clean. You don't break laws. You don't hack accounts. You document. You gather." Then he called someone named Pena. 10 minutes later, a short man with sunburned cheeks and a detective's eyes stepped into the office. "Used to be with Atlantic Mutual's claims division," Keating explained. "He's a PI now, licensed, low profile." Pena leaned forward. "We'll start with movement tracking, phone pings, bank deposits, and eyes-on verification. You pay cash. No footprints." I handed over an envelope with $2,000, my emergency fund. "Just tell me if she's meeting him." I said. And where? By that afternoon, Pena texted me a photo taken from his truck. Hannah, outside Iron Forge Fitness, leaning against Connor Hale's car. The timestamp read 1:36 p.m. A second photo showed her handing him a small brown envelope. A third, both of them walking into a Wells Fargo on King Street. The text below said, "Deposit, yes. 4.5K, will confirm." My stomach sank. I didn't know what was worse, the proof or that I'd expected it. At 5:45, I got another message from Pena. Evening meet, Row North Dock Electrical. Parking lot handshake. I knew that name. The same one from the Marina invoice. While Hannah was at yoga, I drove to the hardware store and asked about the receipt. The clerk remembered her, the scarf, the way she'd double-checked the duplicate key label. "Riverhouse, right?" he said. "Yeah, she wanted it right away. Said her husband always loses his." I thanked him, bought a new deadbolt set and kept the receipt. That night I installed the new deadbolt while pretending to tighten the old one. I left the knob lock unchanged, so her copied key would still slide in, but not turn. Quietly, I set a small battery doorbell camera facing the dockside door. Angled inward, no privacy violation, just my property watching its own entry. The next morning, Tuesday 10/21, I video-called Ruth from the hall bathroom. Phone propped against a mug. She guided me through every medication bottle like she was training a rookie nurse. "Zolpidem," she said. "3 missing." I nodded. "Photograph each with the date front and back, and get a picture of the pill imprint next to the label. If this goes to court, dates and imprints matter." By mid-morning, Pena texted again, "Bank confirmed. 9.2K transfer to Iron Forge LLC from Joint Act. 10/21. That was the first time I felt anger. Not fear, not confusion, just raw, hard anger. I called the bank and confirmed the withdrawal. "Authorized user Hannah Ellison," the voice said. "Do you want to dispute it?" "Not yet," I said, and I wrote the amount, $9,200, in my notebook, underlined twice, then added, "to be accounted for." When Hannah got home that night, she was radiant, talkative. She told me Connor's gym was doing amazing, and that she'd finally bought herself a new watch. I asked what brand. She said, "Oh, something small," and hid her wrist under her sleeve. At 8 p.m., my sister called again. "Mark, you need to secure your finances quietly." By 10:30, Keating had drafted a short-term transfer of $25,000 to a separate account in my name, labeled Emergency Legal and Housing. It was all legal, marital funds preservation in good faith. I transferred it before bed. That night, I slept for 3 hours, half expecting to wake up to a boat alarm or a missing key. Instead, morning came ordinary. Birds, trash truck, the smell of Hannah's eucalyptus shampoo drifting from the bathroom. Over coffee, she said, "Wayne from the marina called. He can check your boat Monday night. You should go. You trust him, right?" Wayne had never called me. I smiled. "Sure, Monday sounds perfect." After she left, I texted Pena, "Need eyes on North Dock Monday, 7:30 p.m. He replied instantly, "Already planned." Bring thermos. Pretend normal. For the rest of the week, I built my paper wall higher. I labeled every document: marina invoice, life policy copy, bank movement, key receipt. Ruth uploaded the med photos to a cloud folder under her hospital email. Keating sealed an envelope marked Detective Morrow, hold pending threshold. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was building a record, the kind of record that outlives lies. On Sunday night, October 26th, Hannah leaned on the doorframe, towel over her hair, and said, "I invited Connor and Lila for Halloween. We should go down to the dock afterward, maybe light the lanterns." I met her eyes and smiled in a way that must have looked genuine. "That sounds perfect," I said. Inside, my pulse counted down like a metronome. Because now I wasn't afraid of the dark dock. I was counting on it. Friday, October 24th. I was standing at North Dock by 7 a.m., thermos in one hand, clipboard in the other, pretending to inspect my own skiff. The tide was low, the board still wet from a weak rain, and Wayne the dockmaster was chewing on a toothpick as he checked his log. "Funny you asked," he said, squinting at his clipboard. "Someone requested the lights be off for maintenance last weekend. I thought it was you. I kept my voice even. Nope, I like seeing where I walk. Wayne tapped the sheet. Signed off as routine outage. Same invoice you paid last month. But this time, no work order attached. Probably some mix-up. I leaned closer and read the handwritten date. 10/18, same night as the oyster roast. I could hear my pulse between my ears. Mind if I take a quick photo of that for my records? I asked. He shrugged. Go ahead. I took 2 clean photos, thanked him, and walked back to my truck like I hadn't just photographed my own obituary rehearsal. At 9 a.m., Pena texted, Got it. North Dock log, batch a duplicate invoice. Wayne's solid witness. He tailed Hannah again that afternoon. Iron Forge, King Street Bank, quick stop at Connor's office. By 3 p.m., she'd withdrawn another $500 in cash. Small bills, Pena said, sending a photo from his zoom lens. Looks like payment to electrician. That night, I changed the locks. I waited until Hannah left for her girls' night spin class, then pulled out the new deadbolt set I'd bought on the 20th. The screwdriver slipped once, slicing my palm shallow, and I wiped the blood on a rag before finishing. I left the knob lock untouched. I went further. The same one. I mounted a battery doorbell camera just inside the dockside door. When I tested her key later, it slid in clean. It wasn't illegal. Turned halfway and faced inward. The deadbolt was mine alone property. I hid the receiver in the attic behind a stack of inspection folders labeled 2019-2023. Before bed, I marked the wine cork. I took a mechanical pencil and pressed a tiny dot under the rim of the existing bottle's cork. It looked like nothing, but if it disappeared, I'd know. On Saturday, I drove to a pharmacy and bought a preservative kit for open wine bottles. I labeled the corks with numbers. 1A, 1B, like evidence tags. The clerk probably thought I was preparing for a tasting party. That evening, Ruth called. You're setting the stage, Mark. Keep calm. Keep records. Her nurse voice made me steady again. You think she'll actually do it? I asked. Ruth sighed. If she believes you're worth more dead than alive, yes. Just make sure the story she's rehearsed won't match the facts. I spent the next morning rereading the life insurance documents, memorizing small details, the accidental death clause, the exclusion for criminal acts. The irony wasn't lost on me, that the woman I'd trusted might trip the very clause that voided her payday. By Monday, October 27th, Pena and Keating were ready. Pena met me behind a diner near the marina, handed me a flash drive. Everything's here, he said. Photos, timestamps, cross-reference of Hannah's visits to the bank and Connor's gym payments. I even have her buying a red ring keychain, same one as your dock key. Where'd she buy it? I asked. Hardware store. Same day she copied the River House key. Keating took the drive and said, We'll hold this. If they try anything Monday night, we let them act first. Let them hang themselves with their own paperwork. That night Hannah came home radiant again, humming, a scent of sea salt lotion trailing her. Are boat lights fixed? She asked. Wayne said he'd checked them today. I lied. She smiled, satisfied, and poured me a glass of wine. The pencil dot was gone. I didn't drink it. I pretended to. When she turned, I poured half into a potted fern behind the curtain. The leaves wilted almost immediately. I took a photo and texted Ruth, dot missing. Wine burnt plant, she replied. Sedative or cleaning agent. Don't drink anything you didn't open yourself. I slept light that night. Every floorboard creak felt like a breath behind my ear. Tuesday morning, Wayne called. Boat's clear, lights should be working. Someone did request another test for Friday evening, though. You need that? No, I said quickly. Please cancel any after-hours tests. He hesitated. All right, Mr. Ellison, you okay? You sound tired. I'm fine, I lied. Wednesday I went over every detail with Keating. We have evidence of planning, he said. Now we need intent in action. What if she never acts? I asked. What if she waits? He leaned back, hands folded. Then we let her think she's safe until she incriminates herself with her mouth. Words can be fingerprints, Mark. You just need to put her in a room where lying becomes perjury. We would soon enough. On Sunday, October 26th, while cleaning up breakfast, Hannah leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand. Connor says he and Lila are coming for Halloween, she said. You'll wear that sailor shirt I love, right? Sure, I said. She smiled, but her eyes were flat, calculating. Maybe we'll go down to the dock after. You and Connor can have one of your nightcaps. Sounds perfect. That night I stood by the window, watching the reflection of the dock lights shimmering in the water. For now they were on, bright, steady, unbroken. I made sure of it. I opened my notebook, the one labeled October, and wrote the last line for that day. She thinks I'm walking into darkness. She doesn't know I've already wired it for light. Halloween came with warm wind and bad omens. Charleston's sky was the color of brass, that sticky pre-storm hue where every sound carries too far. Kids were already running across Rutledge Avenue in plastic masks, and the air smelled like sugar and rain. Anna was in front of the mirror with her hair pinned up, brushing on makeup a little too carefully. She caught me watching her. "Costume bruises," she joked, dabbing fake blue under her collarbone. "You should see the other guy." I laughed like I was supposed to, but my stomach clenched. Because on the counter beside her makeup kit was a tube of concealer labeled Stage Tone, the same kind they use for prosthetics. Not from her usual brand. I took a photo of it when she turned to get her hairspray, catching the label and the clock in the reflection. 6:43 p.m. I kept my act up. "Let me grab the candy," I said, walking to the kitchen. I poured half a bag of Snickers into the bowl, the other half into a drawer so I could focus on the doorbell camera feed. It showed nothing but neighborhood kids. For now, Hannah floated around the house in her sailor scarf, humming. She poured 2 glasses of red wine and held one out to me. "To new chapters," she said. The pencil dot on the cork was gone again. I smiled and clinked glasses. When she looked away to adjust the bowl of candy, I poured mine into the fern behind the curtain, the same one that was now limp and brown. I took a quick photo with my phone, the wine spreading like blood across the dirt. At 8:01 p.m., she said, "Let's walk to the dock before it rains." You love that sound, don't you? I grabbed my jacket, slipped my phone into my pocket, and started recording audio. Just a safety net. The tide was high, water lapping close to the boards. I noticed right away the North Dock lights were out again. Every other section glowed amber. Ours was dark. Wayne's inspection report had confirmed those lights should have been working. Someone had killed them deliberately. Hannah walked a few paces ahead of me, her heels soft on the wood. She turned, smiling in the half-light. "Looks peaceful tonight," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "Almost too peaceful." That's when another shadow appeared near the end of the dock, tall, broad, moving like he belonged there. "Connor, you sure you want to go out?" "Looks rough," he said, fake casual, hands in pockets. Hannah's voice brightened too fast. "Oh, you're here." I told him we'd test the boat lights. "Mark keeps putting it off." "I told you," I said, "the carburetor's not right. We can test it tomorrow." Connor's smile twitched. "All right, man." "Whatever you say." The wind picked up and the water slapped the pilings like a warning. I noticed the faint reflection of my own motion light flicker on at the river house. Someone had stepped close to the door. I turned to Hannah. "We'll head back." "Storm's rolling in," she hesitated. Her eyes darted toward Connor, then back to me. "You're sure?" "Yeah," I said. "No point risking it." We walked back to the yard, Connor trailing a few steps behind, before peeling off toward the road. I didn't need Peña's message to confirm it later. He'd been filming from across the marsh the entire time. When we stepped through the back door, Hannah sighed. Exaggerated. "You're so paranoid sometimes." I smiled, calm. "Maybe, but paranoia's just preparation someone else doesn't have." That night, while she showered, I uploaded the audio recording, the photo of the wine cork, and Peña's text thread to Keating's secure drive. Ruth called around midnight. "Still alive?" she asked quietly. "Barely," I said. "But the stage is set." On Saturday morning, Hannah slept in. I went through the bank statements online and saw it. A fresh $9,200 transfer from our joint account to Iron Forge Fitness. Same amount Peña had logged earlier in the week. I printed the confirmation page and underlined the memo line. Wire transfer, business expense. When she woke, she asked if I wanted to invite the Hales for Sunday supper. "Might be nice," she said, pouring coffee like nothing was wrong. "Sure," I said. "I'll pick up a roast." That afternoon I met Keating and handed him the fresh transfer slip. "We're close," he said. "Let her get comfortable." Then we hit the switch. He drafted subpoenas for the dock log and the electrical service ticket. We'll keep them sealed until hearing day. You just smile and let her believe she's in control. Sunday morning, I replaced the batteries in the doorbell cam and checked the angle. The reflection from the dock shimmered faintly across the screen. It was proof waiting for context. Hannah spent most of the day setting the table, humming old pop songs. Every note felt like an alibi rehearsed. As the first guests pulled into the driveway, Ruth sent me a final message. Don't eat or drink anything you didn't open. Watch for switch moves. I slipped my phone into my pocket and texted back one word, ready. By the time the oven timer dinged, the house smelled like rosemary and dread. And as Hannah raised her glass to toast fresh starts, I already knew her next drink would be the last one she poured without a lawyer watching. Sunday, November 9th. If I'd been a stranger walking into our dining room that night, I would have thought it was a commercial for forgiveness. Candles, a roast chicken, friends laughing softly. But every fork scraped to me sounded like metal on bone. The Hales arrived first. Connor with a bottle of Chardonnay he never meant to open. His wife Lila, trailing behind in a bright dress that didn't hide the tension in her shoulders. Ruth came last, calm and polite as ever, carrying a pecan pie and something invisible, certainty. She'd seen every photo, every pill count. Hannah played the hostess to perfection. To fresh starts, she said, raising her glass. To family, to business, to love surviving rough waters. I clinked glasses and gave her what she wanted, a smile. And to lights that finally work on the dock, I added, watching her flinch just enough for Ruth to notice. The oven timer dinged. Perfect cue. I stood. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Everyone laughed. My harmless YouTube habit, the one I used to slip tension through a joke. It bought me 5 seconds to step into the kitchen. While the laughter faded, I quietly switched the glasses, hers for mine, mine for hers, and walked back in with the same grin. The camera in the corner blinked green once before returning to steady red. Everything I needed was now in view. Dinner was small talk with razor edges. Connor bragged about the gym's new investor. Lila smiled tight, sipping slowly. Ruth asked gentle questions about insurance, innocent enough to seem like idle chatter. You ever think of lowering Mark's policy now that you're both healthy? Hannah's fork paused mid-air. No, she said too quickly, then forced a laugh. He climbs ladders for work. We need coverage. Lila's eyes flicked to her husband. Coverage for what exactly? Connor tried to fill the silence with fake cheer. Mark's always on roofs, right? One wrong step, and then I guess it's good the dock lights are working again. Ruth said softly. The room went very still. Even the oven fan seemed to stop. I looked at Hannah, watching her mask slide into place. We should invite Wayne over sometime, I said. He fixed those lights twice already. Strange, though. They kept going out the same nights we had company. Connor shifted in his chair. Must be faulty wiring. Maybe, I said. But Wayne says no one authorized the shutoff. Funny thing, his log shows someone requested maintenance under my name. Problem is, I was in Beaufort that weekend. Hannah's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the water pitcher. Mark, please, not now. Sure, I said, calm as a judge. But maybe now's better than later. Ruth stood quietly, slid a folded paper onto the table, a copy of the $9,200 transfer slip. I found this when I helped you balance your joint account last week, remember? Business expense to Iron Forge. Connor's throat clicked. That's a loan, he said. Totally above board, I nodded. Of course it is. Just like the second key to the river house you copied on October 20th, or the invoice for the dock lights on October 18th, or the bottle of wine with the sedatives in it. We all make mistakes. Hannah's face drained of color. You're insane. Am I? I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped once. The small chime of a notification played through the living room speaker. Ruth's idea. On the TV screen appeared the paused frame of the doorbell camera footage. Hannah in the yard Halloween night, sliding the red ring key into her pocket. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the tick of the dining room clock. Connor stood, voice shaking. We should go. Ruth smiled sweetly. Yes, maybe you should. I didn't move to stop them. I just said, Detective Morrow will want to talk to you both tomorrow morning. Bring that red key if you can find it. Lila looked at her husband, realization dawning fast and cold. Connor, what did you do? He didn't answer. He just walked out, shoulders sagging under a weight heavier than guilt, evidence. Hannah turned to me, her mask gone now, raw panic shining through. You set me up, she whispered. I nodded once. No, you set me up. I just hit record. Ruth gathered her purse and the pie. I'll call you in the morning, Mark, she said gently. You get some sleep. When the door shut behind them, Hannah collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I wanted to feel relief, but what came instead was exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your ribs and stays there. I took her glass, the one she thought was mine, and poured it down the sink. No reaction, no smoke, just wine and nothing more. I would send it for testing anyway. Upstairs, I opened the envelope Keating had given me, already stamped and sealed for filing. Temporary protective order and emergency asset freeze request. All I had to do was drop it off at the courthouse first thing Monday morning. I stood at the window for a long time, watching headlights move down Rutledge Avenue, thinking about how people look when they realize their performance is over. Hannah sat in the dining room below me, head in her hands, whispering something I couldn't hear. Outside, the wind off the water carried the faint sound of the marina bell. Somewhere in that dark tide, truth had finally changed direction. Tomorrow, it would have a witness stand and a case number. Monday, November 17th. Room 3C smelled like floor wax and coffee gone stale. The air conditioning hummed overhead, the kind of white noise that eats at nerves. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Tom Keating, my lawyer, who straightened his tie like it was part of the ritual. Across from us sat Hannah, perfectly made up, wearing the same pearl earrings I'd given her on our 10th anniversary. Next to her, Connor Hale, looking 10 years older than he had a week ago. Jaw clenched so tight, his teeth must have hurt when the bailiff called the court to order. I felt the weight of 12 weeks crush into one instant. Every photograph, every receipt, every quiet night pretending I didn't know. It was all here, in this air-conditioned room, where truth finally had a microphone. Judge Wilcox looked up from her notes. Mr. Ellison, Mrs. Ellison, we're here on a motion for emergency protective order and joint asset review. Mr. Keating, proceed. Keating stood. Your Honor, this isn't just a marital dispute. This is a premeditated insurance fraud conspiracy that could have resulted in Mr. Ellison's death. A murmur rolled through the small courtroom. Hannah's lawyer, Dunbar, a slick man with gelled hair, rose like he was expecting applause. Objection to tone, Your Honor. There's no criminal conviction here, only speculation and domestic strain. Keating smiled, polite but lethal. We'll let the evidence speak. He started with Wayne, the dockmaster. Wayne shuffled up, hat in hand, and swore in. Mr. Ellison asked me about the North Dock lights, he said, voice steady. I checked the log. The shutoff was requested October 18th. Says here it was Mr. Ellison's name, but handwriting didn't match. Keating nodded. And did you authorize that outage? No, ma'am, Wayne said, glancing at Hannah. Never approved it. Somebody used his name. Keating held up the photograph I'd taken of the logbook. This, Your Honor, is the page Wayne's referring to. You'll see the same date Mrs. Ellison texted her associate about a boat test. Dunbar jumped in. That proves nothing. Anyone could... Please, Mr. Dunbar, the judge said. Let him finish. Keating turned to Ruth sitting behind me. Your Honor, we call Ruth Ellison. My sister walked up, professional calm in her hospital scrubs. Under oath, she testified about the missing sedatives, the cork markings, the photographs with the Post and Courier visible for timestamp verification. Every word was surgical. In my professional opinion, she said, the medications found in that wine could induce drowsiness and impaired balance. Did your brother ever mention concerns about his safety? Keating asked. Yes, she said softly. He told me he believed his wife was planning to stage an accidental fall. The room went cold. Dunbar stood again, trying to rattle her. Miss Ellison, are you aware of the difference between speculation and medical fact? Ruth didn't blink. I'm aware of the difference between a patient and a suspect, sir. And I know when someone's trying to kill one. Even the judge couldn't hide a small smile. Then came Peña, the private investigator. He played a slideshow of photographs on the projector. Hannah at the bank with Connor, envelope in hand. The time-stamped Marina footage. Her slipping my red ring key into her pocket on Halloween. Those photos were taken lawfully from public vantage points, Peña explained. Times and dates match bank withdrawals and service invoices. Do you recognize this person? Keating asked. Yes, Peña said, pointing to the frame. That's Mrs. Ellison. That's the hardware store, October 20th. That's her signing for a copied key labeled River House. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Ellison, did you authorize this copy? Hannah's voice cracked, but she held composure. That's lip balm, not a key. Keating clicked again. The doorbell camera video appeared on the screen. Hannah, in full view, slipping the red ring key into her coat pocket. The room erupted in whispers. Looks like lip balm to me, Keating said dryly. Judge Wilcox tapped her pen. Quiet, please. Ruth pressed her lips together, eyes on me. I kept my face neutral. Then came the bank records. Keating presented the transfer slips. $9,200 moved from our joint account to Iron Forge Fitness. Mr. Hale, he said, you'll notice these deposits coincide with your business expenses? Connor shifted. They were loans. Authorized by whom? He looked at Hannah. She said it was fine. The judge's brow rose. Mr. Ellison's signature appears nowhere on these transfers. Do you have written permission? No, Connor said quietly. Keating didn't press. He didn't have to. Then came the texts. The courtroom went silent as the monitor displayed one message after another. If the dock lights are out, it looks like an accident. Policy pays within 60 days. Bruises can happen in a fall. Hannah's face went white. Those were jokes, she stammered. Inside jokes. Keating stepped closer to the bench. Jokes followed by a shut-off order, sedatives in wine, and a forged key. Dunbar objected again, but the judge waved him off. I think we've heard enough, Keating finished quietly. Your Honor, my client isn't asking for vengeance. He's asking for distance and safety. A temporary protective order, an emergency freeze on marital accounts, and exclusive possession of the River House until the investigation concludes. The judge nodded slowly. Granted, Dunbar's jaw dropped. Your Honor, granted, she repeated, firm. Additionally, the court will forward copies of this transcript and the evidence binder to the Charleston Police Department's Fraud and Major Crimes Division for review. The gavel came down. One sharp sound. Hannah turned toward me then, eyes glassy, mouth trembling. Mark, I didn't mean, save it for the detective, I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine anymore. Outside the courtroom, the air was bright and thin. Ruth squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she said. Keating was already talking to Detective Morrow in the hall, handing over a folder thick with printed messages and bank slips. Morrow's expression hardened as he flipped through the photos. Mr. Ellison, he said, will be opening a fraud and conspiracy inquiry effective today. I'll need you to come in tomorrow morning to formalize a statement. I nodded. Whatever you need. He closed the folder. For what it's worth, you did everything right. Documented, clean, lawful. That's rare. When I stepped out into the parking lot, the November sun hit my face, and I realized for the first time in weeks I wasn't waiting for something terrible to happen. It already had, and I'd survived it. Behind me, the courthouse doors opened and shut. Hannah's heels clicked once on the steps, then stopped. I didn't turn around. The sound of the gavel still echoed in my head, crisp as a heartbeat. The law had caught up to the lie, and for the first time, truth was heavier than fear. The next morning, November 18th, Detective Morrow's pen clicked twice, steady and slow. Mr. Ellison, he said, we're opening a formal fraud and conspiracy investigation. I nodded, the words sinking in like a weight I was finally ready to carry. His office smelled like cold coffee and paper dust. Every sound in that room was a reminder that this was real, but survivable. He laid out a series of plastic evidence sleeves on the desk. My photos, Ruth's pill logs, Peña's surveillance shots. You did something most people don't, he said. You kept your receipts. You stayed calm. That's all I had, I replied. Paper and patience. He smiled, half admiring. We'll need to run chemical tests on that wine sample. The labs backed up. but the cork residue should tell us everything. I gave my formal statement, reading from notes I'd written in pencil. Times, locations, witnesses. Nothing emotional, just facts. When we finished, he shook my hand like a man sealing a deal. By Wednesday, the courthouse clerk issued an official restraining order. Hannah was barred from the river house, the marina, and any financial access to my accounts. The bank flagged her name automatically. Connor's Gym, Iron Forge Fitness, had a new sign on the door, temporarily closed for renovation. But no hammers swung, no drills buzzed. It was just shuttered and silent, like a body playing dead. Ruth dropped by that night with chili and the golden retriever she refused to leave alone since the hearing. We ate in silence until she said, "You did it. You got justice." I shook my head. "Not yet, but it's coming." On Friday, Morrow called again. We executed a search at Iron Forge and North Dock Electrical. Found correspondence, emails, invoices, and an unsigned loan application listing your life insurance policy as collateral. "That's not something people do by accident." I closed my eyes. "Did she sign anything?" "Not yet," he said. But Connor did. He's nervous. By Saturday, November 22nd, the cracks became craters. Connor's investors pulled their money. His wife, Lila, filed for separation. The gossip traveled fast. Charleston's small when it comes to scandal. And Hannah, ever the actress, tried one last move. She offered a settlement through her lawyer. "She'll walk away from the house," Keating said over the phone. "If you withdraw your complaints." "What about the investigation?" I asked. "That's not negotiable." "The state runs that now." "Then tell her no," I said. Sunday, November 23rd, I walked the creaking hallway of the river house alone. The air smelled of varnish and tide. Every plank in that place had survived storms worse than this. I leaned on the window frame and watched the light shimmer across the creek. It looked honest again. No more tricks, no more rehearsed darkness. Monday, November 25th, we went back to court for the asset hearing. It wasn't as dramatic as the first. The judge reviewed Keating's ledger of diverted funds. The insurer's statement, showing multiple unauthorized inquiries about my policy, and Connor's own signed admission that he anticipated repayment through insurance proceeds. Her ruling was brief. Hannah owed restitution for the $200 transfers, forfeited her claim to the river house, and would receive limited spousal maintenance pending criminal review. "This court recognizes a credible pattern of deceit and attempted fraud," Judge Wilcox said. "Mr. Ellison's documentation was exhaustive. It saved his life." Keating leaned toward me. "You can breathe now," he whispered. As we left, Morrow stopped us in the hallway. "We've got enough to recommend charges," he said. "Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, attempted poisoning. It'll take time, but the DA's on board." I shook his hand again. "Detective, thank you for believing paper over performance." He grinned. "It wasn't the paper, Mark. It was how you used it. That night, Ruth and I sat on the porch, watching the tide roll in under a silver moon. I thought about how revenge isn't fire, it's foundation. You build it strong, you let truth settle like concrete, and then you stand on it while the rest sinks." Justice hadn't arrived with applause. It came in form stamped, signed, and sealed. And for the first time in months, the only thing trembling in my hands was peace. Thanksgiving morning came soft and gold, the kind of low Carolina light that sneaks through blinds like forgiveness. The house smelled like cinnamon, sage, and something close to peace. I carved a turkey for two, Ruth and me, and realized halfway through that my hands weren't shaking anymore. The river house was quiet. No fake laughter, no phone buzzing, no rehearsed affection echoing through the hall. Just the creak of the old floorboards and the radio murmuring in the corner. The same place that once felt like a trap now felt like refuge. Ruth poured coffee, sat across from me and said, "You know, you didn't just survive her. You outdocumented her." I smiled. "That's all I ever knew how to do." "Inspect, record, verify," she grinned. "Turns out that's justice work too." We ate in silence for a while, watching the wind push the marsh grass. I thought about everything that had almost been lost. My pension, my house, my name, and my life. I remembered every night I sat awake, listening for the sound of someone unlocking the door that only I should have had the key for. When the dishes were done, I opened the file box on the table. Inside were neat bundles, each bound with a blue rubber band. Marina invoice, bank transfers, key receipt, life policy, PI photos, court orders. My life in 12 labeled stacks. I stared at them for a long time, then realized they weren't evidence anymore. They were survival stories printed on paper. That afternoon, I recorded something small for myself. Just a voice memo on my phone, but it felt right. If anyone ever hears this, I said, here's what I learned. Keep records of everything you love, because someday you might need proof it mattered. And if someone calls you paranoid for doing it, they've probably never been betrayed by someone they trusted with their name. I saved the memo in a folder labeled New Life, November. Ruth laughed when she saw the folder name. Always labeling things, she teased. Can't help it, I said. Every label is a boundary. She got quiet, then said softly, You think you'll ever forgive her? I leaned back, watching the light flicker off the creek. Maybe someday. But forgiveness isn't the same as permission. And I'm done granting her either. The golden retriever, Max, padded over and rested his head on my knee. I scratched behind his ear and thought about how many nights that dog had kept me anchored when everything else was breaking loose. I wrote a line in my notebook later that night, something I wanted to remember if I ever doubted myself again. Revenge done right looks like a judge's order and a good night's sleep. Before bed, I texted Keating a thank you. What's next? I asked. He replied almost instantly. Steady as she goes, sailor. DA's prepping the file. You're free for now. Don't waste it. I stood at the window and watched the lights ripple across the dark water. Somewhere in that reflection, I could still see the man I was 3 weeks ago, tired, blind, and scared. But now he had something the old one didn't, documentation and distance. I took one last photo from the deck, nothing fancy, just the dock lights glowing steady for once, and saved it under a new folder, Proof of Life. The phone buzzed again, a text from Detective Morrow. We recovered messages from a second phone. Need you Monday to review. I stared at the message, then at the calm water outside. Justice wasn't finished yet. It just needed another signature. Another truth pulled from the dark. I turned off the porch light, locked the new deadbolt and whispered to the empty house. You didn't lose me, Hannah. You gave me away. Then I climbed the stairs, leaving the dock light on for myself. Early December, Charleston woke up shrouded in fog, thick enough to hide everything but the sound of seagulls. I was in Tom Keating's office again when a courier arrived carrying a sealed cardboard shoebox, tagged Evidence Chain of Custody. Inside was Connor Hale's burner phone, recovered during a search of his gym. Keating handed me gloves. You should see this, he said. I scrolled through the mirrored copy they'd printed out, texts, voice notes, fragments of planning, messages between him and Hannah, dated October 18th through November 1st. He'll be drowsy after wine. No cameras on North Dock. Say we were asleep. And then one I'll never forget. We can say he left after midnight. No one watches that side of the marina. Below it was a selfie. Hannah and Connor standing outside the hardware store. 10 to 20, her hand raised in a peace sign. An anchor emoji as the caption. The same day she copied my key, Keating slid the printed transcript into a folder. You don't need to see the rest, he said gently. This is enough, I just nodded. I'd already buried the version of her I once loved. Seeing her handwriting next to mine on old notes was worse than any photograph. Within a week, the district attorney's office opened a formal case file. Morrow called to confirm, charges pending review, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and attempted homicide by means of poisoning it. Sounded surreal hearing those words. With my name attached as victim, I'd spent my life as the witness to other people's damages, rotted beams, leaking foundations, but never imagined I'd be the one whose life needed rebuilding. On December 12th, I refinanced the Charleston bungalow in my name alone. The bank slip showed $699,802 due just before Christmas. It was steep but doable. I was booked solid with home inspections through January. And Ruth, true to her word, moved into the downstairs apartment with Max, the golden retriever. Her rent covered the new loan interest, and her laughter filled the house like it used to when we were kids. The same week, Keating finalized the separation agreement. Hannah's share of the property was reduced to account for restitution and legal fees. No contest. She didn't even show up to sign. Her lawyer couriered the papers from jail. I spent nights walking the River House pier alone. The North Dock lights now burned brighter than ever. Wayne had replaced every bulb himself and refused payment. "Consider it closure," he said. One night I stood at the edge, the wind lifting my jacket, the marsh whispering below. I thought about how revenge had always sounded to me. Hot, impulsive, loud. But living through it taught me something different. Real revenge is quiet, methodical, patient. It doesn't explode, it erases. A week later, Ruth found me sanding the deck railing. "Still fixing things?" she asked. "Always," I said. "That's what inspectors do. We repair what's worth keeping." That evening, I sold my skiff to a father and his teenage son who'd driven from Beaufort. They paid in cash and brought hot chocolate in a thermos. "She'll get good use," the man said. "Take care of her," I told him. "She's seen enough storms." When they drove off, I realized how light I felt. That boat had been part of the plan to kill me. Now it was someone else's freedom. By December 18th, the DA's office sent an official email. Charges filed. Case 25 CR 1786. I stared at the screen, half expecting some emotion to rise. Triumph, anger, anything. But all I felt was clarity. The story wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about boundaries, about knowing when to let go of what tried to drown you. I closed the laptop, turned off the lamp, and looked out at the water one last time. The lights across the creek shimmered steady, unwavering. Justice doesn't announce itself with sirens or headlines. It just leaves the guilty in silence and the survivor standing. January rain always sounded like apology on the River House roof. Soft, steady, and late. I was standing by the window with coffee gone cold when my phone buzzed. A news alert: Charleston woman pleads not guilty in insurance conspiracy case. The headline didn't use Hannah's full name, but the details did: local gym owner, associate, and spouse involved in staged accident plot. My own life reduced to 3 paragraphs and a byline. I didn't read it twice. Some stories are better heard once. Later that morning, I met with Keating downtown to sign the final property papers. The conference room was quiet, except for the scratch of his pen. He slid the final document across the table. "That's it," he said. "River House and the Rutledge bungalow are solely yours now. She has no claim left." I signed my name, slow and deliberate. Each letter felt like closure written in ink. Keating smiled. "You know, most men would have lost everything in a case like this. Money, sanity, reputation. You kept all 3 because you documented before you accused." I laughed quietly. "Guess my old habits paid off." He stood, packing his briefcase. "What will you do now?" "Inspect," I said. "And sleep." That afternoon I drove out to the marina one last time. The air was crisp, the docks empty except for a few gulls. I walked the length of the North Dock, my dock, and stopped at the edge. The new bulbs Wayne installed glowed gold over the water, rippling like quiet applause. I thought about how close I'd come to being a story told by other people, instead of one I could still tell myself. I sat on the railing, phone in hand, and opened a note I'd written weeks earlier. "Revenge isn't fire, it's boundary." I added a final line: "Survival is the sound of your own key turning in the lock after everyone else has lost theirs." A few days later, I got a letter from the insurance company, Special Investigations Unit. Claim flagged. Beneficiary changes frozen. Policyholder advised to retain counsel. I framed nothing from that letter. I didn't need trophies, just peace. By late January, Connor had agreed to a plea deal in exchange for testimony. Hannah's trial was still pending. I didn't plan to attend. Watching her face again would just reopen a wound that finally learned to scar. Instead, I went back to work. First inspection of the year, a 1920s bungalow on Queen Street. The new trainee followed me around, asking questions about crawl spaces and joist rot. At one point he asked, "Why do you write so much detail in your reports?" "Most guys just take pictures," I smiled. "Because one day someone might need to prove I told the truth." He nodded like he didn't get it, but maybe would. Someday. That evening I returned home to Ruth, cooking shrimp and grits downstairs, Max snoring on the porch. I walked through the house and locked each door one by one, a ritual I didn't rush anymore. When I reached the last one, the river house deadbolt, I paused. Outside, the dock lights burned steady. Inside, the house hummed with quiet life. I whispered more to the walls than to myself. "You didn't lose me, Hannah. You gave me away." And in that silence, with the rain ticking against the window and the world finally still, I understood something simple and final. Some people chase revenge to feel powerful. I chased truth to feel real, and in the end, that was enough.